Right, we are recording. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to internal verification training. Happy Friday. And I will hand this off to Daniel.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I call this verification part 2. So we had pretty extensive verification training a bit ago, and I'm going to actually start with the end of that presentation to go over the ideas of V4 and V5 first, a little more in depth than we did in the last round. So we're going to start there. I'm going to share my screen. In a moment. There we go. All right. So as part of being selected verification, there are 3 different primary groups that a student could be selected for, and which group they're in determines what type of information is verified. So by far, the most common group to be selected for is the B1 group, which we talked about a bit in the last meeting. 98% of the students who were selected in 2021 were selected for that group. And that's the things we're used to. And those are the things that Inceptia verifies. But we have a handful that do get selected for the 2 other groups called V4 and V5. With those, since there's such a small portion of them and due to the information that's being collected, we keep those internal and collect the forms ourselves. So
Daniel, your voice is cutting in and out a little bit.
Am I?
Yeah.
I need a new set of headphones. We go through an impressive amount of headphones in this household. I think that's what's happening, but I'll hold it over here and hopefully that helps. So the V4 tracking group is looks for these 2 items, which seem fairly simple, but they can be a little challenging sometimes. So one is the high school completion status, and that is something that generally we have on file for all students. We have their final high school transcript or their high school diploma, which comes in through admissions, and then we either end up being able to see it through archived documents or can request that from admissions if for some reason it's not showing up for us. So high school completion status is a good one. And also on the ADC GPS side, sometimes that's a little harder to come by because the students have been out of high school for a little bit longer. So they may not have included that with their initial application to the school, but that is part of this verification that needs to be tracked down to complete it. So high school completion status is one of them. The other one is an actual form, identity statement of educational purpose. So that one is essentially the student swearing that they are indeed themselves and that they're going to use any federal funding for their education. So it's kind of an anti-fraud type of measure. The form that we have for that comes in 2 options. So in a normal year, there's the option of having a student come into the office and actually present that form to a staff member, show the staff member their identification, their passport, their California driver's license, whatever they have. So it's a photo ID, government photo ID, and then signing their name in front of that person after they have confirmed the identification of that person. So that is one option of how to complete this form. The other option is to do that very similar thing in front of a notary. So someone else is confirming their identity while they're signing this form, and then they send us the form that's been notarized. That's the normal method of completing this identity statement of educational purpose. With the COVID adjustments to federal policy. We've been able to accept this just with a signature and then sending it in. So we have a version of the form that we call our ID statement of education purpose, COVID, that is available, and I'll pull that up. Because of this flexibility for this this past year, and this coming year, it looks like it was extended out again. So we don't have a solid end date for when we are not using this form anymore, but until we know, and actually we'll get this updated to say past December 31st. But this is the ID of the form. That student can indeed just sign it. They're not, again, still not an electronic signature, but they can sign it and send it in with a copy of their valid ID. So that's not the normal way to do it, but it is the extra flexibility that we received because of the difficulty of coming into an office or even going to a notary. So that is the option for students right now. So it's less than 2% of those who were selected in 2021 were selected in this group. And once the student actually submits this form, then the financial aid officers, when they process this, they have to actually submit something through the to the Department of Education to say, yes, we did this, we completed this specific verification. So it's even a different process on the verification side from the financial aid officers. The next one is called the V5. So if we start with that V1, they call that one the standard verification group. V2, they call the custom verification group. And V4 was the custom. And V5 is the aggregate. So it has everything. It has all the things from V1 and it has all the things from V4. So that's why it goes all the way down to the bottom of this slide. So this one, a student would have to complete all of the verification, the normal income verification ones. And in addition, they would have that identity statement of educational purpose. So a student selected for V5 would have both of these, a lot of items pop onto their document tracking so that we would collect all of these things. So they'd have our normal verification worksheet, whether dependent or independent, would pop up along with the appropriate income documents, as well as the identity statement of educational purpose document pop up. So there'd be a lot of information for those students to sign because they're essentially doing both types of verification at the same time. The most unusual, and for some reason they pull up on the Department of Education's radar to be selected for both. So less than 1% of our students selected verification in 2021 were selected for this group. So same things apply to a regular verification as to this. What signatures are what counts. We don't have an electronic signature process for our internal forms, both for our verification worksheets and for that ID statement of educational purpose. Which brings me to some of the benefits of Inceptia. So
can I add, Daniel, that V4 and V5 are done in-house. They're not sent to Inceptia.
Correct. Yep.
Just want to make sure they understand that part.
So these ones specifically, we don't ask Inceptia to do because of the type of information, mainly because of that identity statement. There's no way for a student to go into an Inceptia office to do in-person an identity statement, while they could potentially do the notary portion. And in the current flexibilities, they could do the COVID version. But in general, that's why we have these as in-house. But Inceptia's benefits would be that they do have an electronic signature process, right? And they do have staff that's available more than 8 hours a day, and they have people that are there and ready for the students to walk the students and families through that process of verification in that V1 So for students who are going through the primary population of our students selected for verification are going through this one where they have to do all that income information, where they have to fill out their household members, the number in college. Do we have those forms with us too? Yes, but we don't have an electronic or signature process. We don't have a bunch of staff on hand that are always ready to answer those questions, and we're not sending them out as many communications as Inceptia does, as we noted in the last training. So it's there are great benefits that which is why we contract with Inceptia. There are great benefits for using them for verification. So on what I see as a greater benefit with that is it's where we're offering them more customer service by using Inceptia. So if a family does have an issue with getting their login set up, and we can certainly help them and connect them with Inceptia to get those resources together to make sure that they can get their login, to make sure that they can continue to upload that information to Inceptia through a secure transfer rather than emailing tax information to us. So really everything about that Inceptia process is helpful for the student to keep their security and to be able to do that electronic signature and to have a more streamlined process. So we are able to do a verification in-house and pull something in-house, but definitely the strong preference is to do it with Inceptia. And I think the first year we worked with Inceptia, we had a few issues. We brought probably 20 or 30 verifications in-house to do because of some real communication pieces with Inceptia. The second year, I think we were down to about 10 or less. And then this last year, I don't think maybe we had 1 or 2. So I think we're really down to Inceptia being part of our ingrained process. And the families that have used them are getting better with that. Even with this coming year, we already have 34 students who have completed verification for the coming, for traditional students who've completed for the coming 21-22 year, which is twice what we had at this point last year and 34 times what we had at this point 2 years ago. So it's so we're even seeing advances year over year within the Inception process. So that's good news. And I, for one, am very glad that we're using Inception. I think that saves us a whole staff member. So that was really the majority of what we wanted to talk through in this training about what we do for internal verifications. But we know that the verification can be a complicated subject for families. So we wanted to open it up for questions on what kind of questions do you get from students and families about verification. Like, do they seem to get the right information up front? Where do families get stuck? Open the floor for that.
I think that with the internal verification, we haven't seen any issues. I think families get stuck with I would say second round with Inceptia, if you will. So either the student didn't understand that a parent has to complete it, or they turn everything in, think they're fine, and then don't realize that they either got a second email from Inceptia with follow-up, or that they still need to do like a signature piece. I feel like that's what we see across the board, or at least what I see, rather. But with internal, I feel like on my case, I think it tends to be straightforward. It's just a matter of finding the documentation or something.
Yeah, but when we did internal verification in our office prior to Inceptia, we got the same questions. We had to ask for the same things over and over again. Sometimes they wouldn't complete verification until like a whole semester because they did not, understand, or they did not understand. And I think that's what we're experiencing. The way added with Inceptia is that they have to create logins, they have to do certain things, and they're probably not used to going to a third party other than Point Loma. And that's probably what I think I'm seeing more, because if we look at our files for review for history of verifications, when we had that, there's a lot of people who did not complete verification as fast as they're actually completing with Inceptia and stuff. So I don't, so that's how come I think Inceptia is probably a lot better, because even with the internal verifications that I did last time, I had to wait for up to 3 or 4 weeks till students sometimes had to turn in things. Luckily, we got Inceptia to send us, we got some information from Inceptia, but we were still missing things from different people. And the problems they had with in-house, I mean, Inceptia also brought it back to us, the same thing. And, so, and the follow-up falls on us after that too. So like advisors will be the ones following up on those things instead of Inceptia following up on it more and stuff. So we like to do it. We are happy to do the internal verification process, but it's just a lot of work, follow up on our end versus what Inceptia, can do.
Yeah, I also think that sometimes we have some families who get confused about when they're in the system or how to locate that information. I just recently had a mom who called about that. But thankfully now we have a little bit more of access in Inceptia, or at least I understand it better. So I was just able to resend stuff to her. But I think that's also another big issue that I see is families having a difficult time creating their accounts just in general. And then kind of what Brad was saying, an additional platform, but I think it's worth the use personally. So those are the things that I noticed from families. Any other advisors have things to share?
I agree. I like Inceptia. I think that it's been helpful. I think those families where it's usually the student doing everything, even the parent side, are the ones who get stuck sometimes. Like, I thought I did it. Oh, well, no, you still have to do, the parent has to do theirs. So that's usually what I find when something's missing. It's the student didn't do the parent's part for them, or however they're operating.
One thing we ran into last week, I think it was with Nina, is now the Inceptia kind of defaults to 21-22. So if a student is still trying to work on their 2021, then they have to switch the year to find their account. So there was a student who was trying to set it up and saying, "Oh, it can't find me," but it was looking for her in the next year when really her account was in the current year. So with that one, it is like a different link or a different access for the different years. So that was a good thing to come across. And I did the same thing when I was trying to look them up. Like, I don't find them in the system, but I was looking in the wrong year. So it was my issue ended up being their issue too. What do you do when a family calls in and is unclear about where they are in the process? So where do you look?
I go right to Inceptia and look at their, verified, or I just look at, well, first of all, I see if they're in there, and then I can see if it's 2 accounts or just 1. So that usually triggers, oh, somebody needs to set theirs up. And then if they're confused on what's still missing, I can look at, communications that they've sent. Now it's nice that we can resend things, so that's really helpful. But usually I just go to the dashboard and see what's up.
Does anybody feel any advisors or FAOs need to know how Inceptia works, how the process works? Because I know we went to Inceptia 3 years ago. They did a brief training overview when we first started. I don't know if anybody wanted to do that again, maybe.
Didn't Daniel just provide? Sorry. Daniel, didn't we just do an Inceptia training that you did, which I thought was beautiful and flawless with the timeline and where to look?
Are you thinking more by Inceptia? Is that what you're thinking, Brian?
I was thinking by Inceptia. So, like how often do they follow up. What does this mean? If you don't know what the memos mean or different things that you see in Inceptia, because sometimes I'd have to call Inceptia myself to find out, what do you mean by this memo or this statement, or what's this actually missing? So I don't know if it'd be beneficial for everyone to have an Inceptia training by Inceptia.
Actually, that would be nice to see how they do it. So I don't mind taking a look at how they do it.
Yeah, and plus, when we go through different systems and you have different systems and you understand how it works, then it helps people to explain it to the students sometimes. Oh, like you're in that process, you're involved in this process, you're in this section or whatever. It does help to have that, because I know that we always tell people, like when they're doing the FAFSA, to go fill out a FAFSA themselves to see how it works and stuff. But it's just that we don't know the system unless we're actually in it and we've gone through it. So what do people think, though? Because we'd have to set that up if we had to.
Yeah, we'll get that set up. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I like seeing that.
Okay.
But I will say Daniel's training was still very informative, and that was very helpful. And I think it would be nice to see more of the inner workings of Inceptia, like we did the first time we did it, with a more established history working with Inceptia, because that was at the very beginning.
Yeah.
We wanted to do an internal verification, but basically it'd just be doing what Daniel did, but with paperwork and me filling out paperwork. So we decided not to do that because it felt that it would be just, this training could go, depending on the verification, the training could go longer and stuff. So, but if you want to do one, like FAOs want to go through it later, we can do an internal verification, actually, go through the forms and go through everything, the checklists and everything and stuff. So we can also do that for the FAOs later too, if they want that training. But it's very rare that we're doing in-house, so that's the thing. And on the undergrad side, I'm the one that's always doing them. So maybe we have to rotate it out so that other FAO and then train as we go along. But but we usually don't get the in-house undergrad training, undergrad stuff towards when school starts most of the time.
It's true. When we have income information now, it's usually about an appeal. So it's just similar, but a different kind of assessment for income. And
also with the people now using the IRS data retrieval tool more often, the verification can get simple. And so always encourage your families to do the IRS data retrieval tool. It'll make verification painless if they do that.
And actually using that DRT is, from my experience, pretty painless. So I feel like it's more of a hassle to have to grab my taxes and send them in that way. You're doing the FAFSA, go ahead and do it right then.
Yeah, but just like I forgot, for 22-23 it's going to be automatic now. They just have to check the box. Right. So they only have to log into the IRS site. They just have to check the box saying I authorize, and that's it. So it'll be very painless for 22-23.
Yay, FAFSA simplification.
Yeah, remember they're going down to 30 questions from 108 questions. So that's going to be a lot easier.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you. This was kind of part 2 of verification, and we really got through quite a lot of verification in part 1. So I don't think it's a necessarily bad thing that we didn't have a ton for this one, but that's all the information I had. I don't know if Molly, if we wanted to use this time for another purpose or.
No, I think we're good. Just like whenever we outsource something, we're paying for that service and we are staffed with the fact that we're having somebody else do this. So it's just really important. And I know I've been on the other side of families calling in and being annoyed that, you know, we're using a third party. We should well, I shouldn't say never, because there's always going to be a circumstance where we need to just make something happen for a difficult family. But we don't want to use internal verification just because somebody doesn't want to go to Inceptia. Like I said, you know, there's always a little asterisk because there's, you know, there might be a particularly fun family to deal with. And so we can always talk about that. But our default should always be directing them to Inceptia. We are staffed, you know, with that in mind, and we are paying them. So let's always minimize that kind of work that we're doing in-house. And Daniel, thank you for the stats on how seldom we're doing that now. That's great. I love hearing that. So if there's no other questions, I will set you guys free on.
Oh, Molly, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Eva.
Yeah.
So what do we pay them in a year? Can you give me an
I would have to
average?
go look at it.
It's $27.50 per completed verification. $27. Then
And how many do they complete on average a year? How many do we? I mean, I'm just ballpark. I'm just curious.
I have that too. I just
It's in our meeting minutes.
asked this morning, so it's well, I have the traditional ones, so I don't have the ones that are done for ADC as well, but they generally do 500 or so in a year. So that was
Wow, okay.
560 in 1819. It was less than that. It was 496 in 1920. For 2021, we're at 440 something. So less students are
Wow.
selected for verification, but it's in the
Wow.
$400 to $500 student range. So there's quite a few.
Yeah. Okay. Curious.
So add another at least 100 for ADC, but I don't have those stats.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I don't know if GPS people, if you have an idea of how many verifications go through.
No idea.
All right, that's fine.
I'm just thankful. They do it and I don't.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we would need 2 more staff members on the undergrad side to do all that with our stuff.
That's a lot of work.
So it does.
Well, then
it costs
That's a bargain. Then that's a bargain. Then
Right. Yeah.
really. Yeah.
All right, kids.
Alrighty.
Thank you. Bye.
Amazing.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Molly.
Oh, one more thing. Well, some people will leave. I am going to get all of these recordings into one place so that we have all of the trainings, the Friday trainings to go back to if you're, I just haven't done it yet, but I'll send that out soon. Okay.
Resource. Great.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you. Happy Friday.
Yeah. Happy Friday.